Now, lifeadministration.com presents the Life Administration Podcast. Here are your hosts, Leslie Loftus and Ryan Taylor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Life Administration Podcast. It is Twitter Thursday.
Sort of.
Kind of.
Yes.
However, we are doing things a little bit differently today, as is
Because
the rest
everybody is doing
Yep.
things differently.
as the rest of the world is doing things differently. We're doing things a little bit differently. So the Twitter universe is consumed with coronavirus, which, and for good reason.
Absolutely.
It's, no question. So, and we talked about it last week. We touched on it. And so we are in the business of running your life, right? And so during this time, it's no different. We have things that need to get accomplished. We have things that need to be taken care of. And I think right now, us focusing on the day is really, really, really important because number one, we have more time than we've had in the past.
Mhm.
And number two, it's
We have more blank time.
right. And either you happen to the day or the day happens to you. One of my bosses said that to me a long time ago, and I absolutely love it. So without further ado, my name is Ryan Taylor. With me, as always, is...
Leslie Loftus. Hello, y'all.
And we are excited to bring you daily scheduling in the time of an epidemic.
Corona.
In the time of Corona, and not the kind that you take with lime, you know.
Right.
So hopefully we're going to have some laughs along the way. We're not going to try to keep it too serious. I think one of the things that we're getting from news coverage everywhere is this sense of everything is very serious all the time. That I actually, Leslie, I'm going to tell you, I have to do work first thing in the morning to lift some of that heaviness off of me. Honestly, I turn the news on or something and it's just fact after fact after fact after fact. And it kind of weighs on me a little bit, and it's not until I kind of take a shower. And honestly, like I pray it off. Like I got to pray it off and get it off me, and just realize.
I've got a new daily devotional in my thing as well. Yep.
And so that's how I get going and rocking and rolling. So in any case, Let's get going. So we're going to talk about, well, how are you doing? First off, I mean,
mostly we're doing fine. I mean, we're all together.
Yep.
All six of us. This is not, I work from home on a regular as freelance and podcasting and stuff like that. Jim, now that he is more senior and he's either traveling, he does go into the office on a regular, but it's not unusual to have him work from home days here and there. And also now my kids are older. I have teens and tweens. So it's not quite the, oh my gosh, all of my 6 and unders are home. And there's no break. So mostly we're doing well. The girls are downstairs right now watching Monty Python.
And the Holy Grail,
Yep.
I saw. Yeah.
So that's pretty good stuff. We've done a lot of playing outside. We've done some yard work. Sunshine is a disinfectant, all that.
Yeah.
We're doing pretty okay. How about y'all?
I think it's been really cool. I've seen more people outside than I have.
Yes.
I mean, it is really sort of neat to see parents and their kids playing in the grass, running around. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean,
I've met more neighbors on walks
Yep.
in the past week than I have in a couple of months.
Yep.
So when we talk about the neighborly stuff and everything, I mean, obviously you need to stay 6+ feet away, but you can shout across the street.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
Yep,
how are
definitely.
you faring? I mean, it's a great time to get to know the dogs, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a perspective. Like, listen, my heart breaks for the service industry in general, right? So, and I'm even a part of that. I am nervous while everything is going okay right now with my lessons and everything like that. I'm always fearful that something could drop and then all of a sudden,
Right.
We have a shelter in place and I can't drive anywhere, or there's a curfew and I can't drive out at night or whatever.
You won't be able to teach your kids because right now, because I was a little worried. I have a few people in my circle that I'm like, for instance, one of our brother-in-laws runs a sports bar. Oh, goodness. And then you teach lessons.
Right.
And I'm like, and in people's homes. But people are doing homeschooling things
Right,
now. And
yeah.
you're the music teacher.
And, so it's
and
like,
you're just one person. So they're like, come on.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like it's going to be okay. But like anyway, I get nervous regardless. But anyway, let's rein it back in. Let's rein it back in because like this conversation can it can take over, right?
Absolutely, it can.
So let's bring it back to our daily schedules and how we can stay productive, how we can incorporate having a good time and just making sure that we're happening to the day and the day is not happening to us. So everyone really is wondering about that. The common phrase that you hear is, what is everyone doing? Right? So what is everyone doing? So Leslie, I'm going to throw it to you.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about for the first segment is the general, what is everybody doing, and talk through basic scheduling, not just Corona scheduling. Because Corona scheduling is something, it's kind of it's a modification of what you actually need as the base schedule. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to go through the basic elements of what schedules are, how they, and I know there's so many things in this podcast that really are kind of, oh my goodness, are you really talking about that basic? But frankly, if nobody's told you before how to make a calendar, how to make a to-do list, how to do a schedule, it's basic after somebody explains it. It's not intuitive. And we hit this so many times. Just because it's relatively easy, just because it's complicated, does not mean that it's instinctive or quick.
Hey, John Wooden, he was like the UCLA men's basketball coach, won more championships than any other men's basketball
tongue-tied.
He won more men's college championships than any other coach in the history of college basketball. Mm-hmm. In his first day, he would sit his team down on the bench and say, okay, show me how to tie your shoes. That was the first practice, was making sure everyone knew how to tie their shoes. Like, he drilled it down to this very, very basic level. We are no different. There's basics that have to be put into place. Once they're put into place, we can talk about, it's like trying to explain to someone, hey, this is how you play chess, right? So what you want to do is you want to lure the queen out so then you can snipe it, and then you have this tremendous advantage in chess. And then the person looks at you and says, well, what does a rook do?
Yeah.
Well, it goes in a straight line. Well, how many pawns can the pawn move?
Correct.
Right? So
correct. Well, sometimes I feel like a little bit like, okay, I don't want to be insulting people. What's the schedule and how do you put one together?
Right.
But that's kind of what's the rook do?
Yeah.
Sort of question. Yep.
Yeah, it moves in a straight line.
So anyway, we're going to talk about the kind of schedules and how to put them together and how to stick with them.
Cool. All right, let's hit it. Different stages of life. Go.
You know what? Different schedules for different stages of life. Some classic examples. Let's say you're in college and you don't need anything more than a part-time job through college. Here you've come from high school, secondary school, where your day is an 8-hour block and it's all filled up, and then you have extracurriculars afterwards. And you go to a college schedule where you're maybe taking 12 to 15 hours is pretty average. So instead of being in school 8 hours a day, you're only in school 12 or 13 hours. Let's call it 13 just to kind of split it. You're only in school 13 hours. Maybe you're working 20. You've got a lot more time. Problem is, time works a bit like a sponge. Our tasks work like a sponge. If you have 8 hours to do a task, it tends to take 8 hours to do just because of procrastination, or I can make this part super fancy because I've got the time to do it, or I can go down this rabbit hole on research or whatever. So the task fills the time allotted. So you want to have some basic scheduling in a broad, open work life like that. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't need to be too fine-tuned. You don't need to be scheduling down to the 30 minutes save, when you actually need to show up at class or at work. But you need some structure on it. Hit the other side. You are a young couple with, 2 children under the age of 3. You really, your life will be much easier if you're scheduled down to generally hours and you're not deviating much by a half an hour either way, because, well, toddlers don't tolerate sleep debt very well. I mean, that's part of, they don't tolerate frustration in general. So, low blood sugar, because they're tiny and they get low blood sugar quickly. So you need to feed them when they expect to be fed, or when their bodies expect to be fed. And sleep, well, they need to be kind of, as every parent will tell you, if we've just gone through daylight savings time, 1 hour shifts of time completely wreck life for people with the under fives.
When I was editing last week's episode and we talked about that, I didn't realize how long I went on about daylight savings. I mean, I hated on daylight savings for like 4 minutes. it's
because
dreadful.
You have a 3-year-old.
Right. I absolutely hate it. And I want to say something to you really quickly before I forget. I had just seen major personal growth from you. When I was telling my chess story, you bit back. You wanted to jump in and interrupt. And you pulled back and you just said, no, I'm going to let him finish this anecdote. And I'm just going to wait till it's done. And the producer in me is just like, if we weren't in Corona, I'd come give you a big hug. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's just awesome. So well done.
The previous episode that we just recorded is one with my husband in it, and that's been a running joke in our marriage as well. I interject a lot. Do not spit into your microphone. Now I'm making him spit into his microphone. Okay, yes, and I actually did. I started to say something, and you are correct. I did. Okay, you know me well. You even saw me pull back. I'm impressed.
Well done. Well done. Okay, so different stages of life, they require different schedules. You have to know what stage of life you're in. Right. That's critical.
But you always want to have one, even when you have tons of free time and it feels like you don't need one. You can get a lot more done if you do. Oh my goodness, if I could go back to my college self, and I wasn't a total waste of timer, but oh my gosh, I wasted so much time, and not in the good way. Smell the flowers. There's something to a part of life that's just, you don't have to be on a tight schedule. And correct. In those broad times, you do not need to be on a tight schedule. Mm-hmm. Completely correct. But a schedule helps.
Yeah. And I would, I almost swing the pendulum the other way, that the more free time that you have, the more beneficial a schedule will be to you. Because you get to focus your energies in specific areas, right? You get to, whatever it is, like to say, I want to do an hour of personal development, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to read some leadership books, right? Mm-hmm. Like leaders are readers. So I'm going to read this, right? Bang. I want to foster a talent. Bang, right? You just put these things in place, because I think what happens is, especially now where entertainment is so readily available that I can just be on my phone, scroll through Facebook, scroll through Instagram. Dude, those things will suck time away from you so fast that you won't even know what happened, right? So,
I did actually get back on Facebook for the Corona thing, because there's really no better way to keep up with people when you can't see people. But yeah, I'm already... That's part of my scheduling, is I have a limit of, now I only need to be there for about an hour, and I go about once a day, really twice a day for about 30 minutes each, and just kind of check in, do my thing, and then I leave. Because otherwise you're just, time can totally get away from you, and you can blow the day. Okay.
So we've talked about the why we need schedules. Let's shift gears and go into the how. So we're going to talk about essential elements of a schedule. So Leslie, what are they?
Okay. So I see a lot of people struggling with this one right now on Corona, because everybody's trying to put in homeschooling stuff if they have kids. And we will get to that in a minute. Schooling stuff I generally call in work stuff. So when I'm talking about work, if you're a student, then school is your work.
Interchangeable.
Exactly. All right. So, but the basic elements that you're going to need, you need a wake up time. Mm-hmm. You need a sleep time. You need work and transit. Must remember to schedule in the transit time. That's a big schedule buster. You need meal times. And then here are the ones that sound optional, but they're really not. Quiet time, exercise time, and family or community time. So whatever schedule you come up with, if it's a loose schedule, if it's a tight schedule, if it's a loose schedule, you can probably have a 2 or 3 hour block, or 2 or 3 hours built in for exercise, or maybe an hour built in for quiet time. If you are a parent of toddlers, that exercise, maybe you'll get 30 in quiet time. Ooh, goodness gracious. You might do better than add up your bathroom time, because you do need to have some sanity quiet time. But yes, that's going to be much harder for you to get a general threshold of even 15 or 20 minutes.
Yep.
But all of those elements need to be but then the other side is if you're the parents of young toddlers, family community time, no problem. You got that sorted.
Doesn't have to be on the schedule in my house.
Doesn't even have to be on the schedule.
Yep.
It just is. It just happens.
This to me is a reflection of your being. It's a reflection of your heart. So I think of priorities in my scheduling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are 3 major priorities that I think of that are must-haves, right? And then I sort of like let the rest fill in, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is my quiet time. It's my morning quiet time. I need 30 to 45 minutes, to jump into my devotional, jump into my Bible, really kind of like see what the Lord's trying to give me for that day and walk that out. Yeah, get centered, whatever that looks like for you. Like that to me is critical. The second thing that I think of is I know on certain nights of the week that on Monday night, on Friday night, and on Sunday night, those are wife times. Those that's what's happening. You can, and Sean knows this, is that if somebody calls me on and says, Ryan, I need you to do something on Monday at between the hours of 7 and 9, it's not happening.
Right.
It's just not that time is very, very guarded.
And I think you're hitting on something essential here for,
It's fine. Go ahead, dogs. Let's go check it out.
yeah,
Okay, all
something
3?
just happened downstairs.
Okay.
We're not sure.
Yep.
This is about daily schedules, and you need to have the, exercise, family, community
Mm-hmm.
time, all that stuff. But scheduling it like you just talked about, where you give bigger chunks over Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, totally fine.
Yeah.
And that's part of what you need to think about when you're figuring out exactly how loose or tight your schedule can be. But it needs to be in there.
Yeah, and and then I think about
Defended.
So I got my daily time with the Lord. I have these specific chunks that are nailed out for my wife, and then I have the other, like you said, family time is not an issue for me, right? Like that's
Right
I don't
now,
have to
it's
put that.
just-
I don't have to put that in there. But the other thing is that my job is such that I do a lot of pouring out into people and that I need time to shut it down. And anyone that knows me knows that I like to play a little bit of the video games, and that I have designated times that I play at Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Those are my times. Just like that's it. That's what's happening.
It's like it's your poker night.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And like that's
You
what's
hang
happening.
out with your buddies and your
I put my
earphones
headset
and,
on, and and usually drop some knowledge on them, because I'm the oldest one of the group. So it's anyway, but it's a really good thing. So anyway, that is a reflection of my heart that my quiet time is a number one priority to me. The time with my wife is a number one priority to me. That playing games and hanging out with my friends, that's a number one priority to me, right? So those, I would just make sure that when you're doing your schedule, don't do it just because this is what a schedule is supposed to look like. You do it because these are the things that are most important to you, and you want to make sure that you have time for them, because you won't be the best version of yourself if you're not getting fed yourself and taking care of yourself.
This is the stuff that you're going to care about long term.
Yes.
Which is why I stuck them in as the essential parts, because even if you don't believe me, you still trust me. You don't have to believe me, but I'm asking.
But believe me.
But I'm asking you to trust me.
Yeah.
Because I failed, for instance, on the exercise one. It just, my children, I wanted mistakes with schedules. So this is one that I made. I made my schedule a little bit too rigid when the children were younger, and I wanted to have my exercise time, just get a quick run in or a quick walk in or something before the children got up. Problem was they never seem to get up at consistent time, and it doesn't matter. You always one way. Anyway, so I never got it in. So I went for about a decade without getting much exercise at all. Big mistake. Big. I don't want anybody to make that mistake with quiet time, because you need your quiet time for your sanity, or, in your devotional time, exercise, family, community. These are the big things that you actually need to have planned in your day.
Yeah, right. Definitely.
You will regret it if you don't.
Right. And I think the other thing too, and this is going to be my transition into putting an actual schedule together, is we talked about it having to have priorities. You can't fit too much in there. Like, realize there is only a certain amount of time in the day. And so my wife, who sometimes I know it sounds like I pick on her in these podcasts, but baby, you know I love you.
I got
and you
picked on at the
you
last
did.
podcast.
And you know, I think
we had my husband on. So
it's
yes.
only fair that there has to be an episode where Lauren comes in and we do the same thing that y'all just did.
I love it.
Because, I mean, whew, she could light it on fire. All right. Anyway, so this idea of making sure that you have enough of the things for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we put the schedule together, we got to make sure that we're not cramming everything in. And so my wife's big thing is that she says her problem is that she underestimates how long things take to do. Right. So,
Yeah.
right. So, and that's why I thought this was a nice little transition, because she'll say something to me like, oh, I'm going out. I'll be home in 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do 17 things in 2 hours. And I'm like, girl, it's going to take you an hour just to go to 2 places just because of traffic and this, that, and the other thing.
And honestly, travel time is one of the things that just gets forgotten. You think, oh, it'll take me 5 minutes to run into that place and pick up the whatever it is. But you forget about the checkout time and you forget about the to and from travel time. And that's before we get into some traffic issue, you know, because the schedule needs to be built with a margin of error in it. And you need to include the travel time.
Right.
And just be conscious of, and also let's call it transition time, because sometimes, you can be staying at the same place, but there's your transition between, okay, let's say you're a work from home person and you are trying to transition from the 6 hours that you spent in your home office, which happens to be your dining room because you don't have a separate space for a home office. And now you need to transition into regular, going to pick up the school run and stuff. You got to remember the time to actually clean up the stuff from the dining room, right? You need to clean up and not only tidy up the workspace stuff, but tidy it up in a way that you can revisit, back to the paperwork mini cast that we talk about and making a filing system. If you take the time at the beginning and put in a filing system, well then, maybe cleaning up your workspace is a 5-minute job instead of a 15-minute job every single time. And oh, by the way, the 15-minute job is really kind of stacks. So now when you're starting the next day, you've got to spend 15 minutes pulling things out. Some of the life administration stuff we've talked about can make this easier, but you need to appreciate you can't back up tasks back to back.
Sure cannot.
Right. Even if they're in the same household, you need a
transition time. And honestly, the transition time is 15 minutes. I mentioned this in a previous episode that I had put a schedule together, and so I think it was somebody in HR, and they looked at my schedule and they say, well, you don't have any time to transition between, because even just walking from one office to the next, someone stops you on the water cooler, or you got to check a message, you got to use the restroom, right? All those sorts of things. So having that transition time built in is critical. So I have a question about scheduling. What is our stance on free time? No, right? So I've seen schedules built in with free. Okay, go ahead. You got
kind of a little bit up there with quiet time, but yes, and especially when you are making a schedule for children, you must have generous portions of free time scheduled in there.
Is it like a weekly thing? Is it a daily thing?
For children, it needs to be daily. Because a lot of people are scheduling for their kids right now. You really need daily. For adults, you can go more with, okay, on Wednesday afternoons from 3 to 4 is just, I don't have anything on this. I'm just doing whatever I want. It's just free time. Adults can be a little bit more. Yeah, I'd like to say that you could do free time every day, but let's be realistic. There's, only so much stuff you can put in an every single day schedule. But adults can definitely do it with a Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, or, whatever. Or just pulling the Sabbath option and saying, okay, Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon is just free time.
I have another question. In the show notes, you have think vegetables first. And I have no point of reference for this. I don't know what it means. So I'm just going to say the words to you and say, please tell me what that means. Vegetables first.
Okay. So when you were putting a schedule together, the first thing you need to do is write down all of the stuff all of those essential elements, and then all of the details about your own, okay, school drop off is this, my work and my transit time to work is this, my hours at work, so write down all of those things that need to be in the block. And then when you start to put them in, a couple of guidelines to follow. One, remember what were we just talking about? Remember the transition time.
Scheduling? This is episode 21? No, I don't even know what episode it is.
But as you're backfilling, so you've got the basic bones, and most of it is going to be your wake and your sleep, your meal times, and your work and school transition time. So you've got the basic structure there, and you're backfilling in with all of the other things that you want. Something to think about. Eat your vegetables first. Schedule the things that, like if you're not really excited about doing the exercise and you just, Leslie told me to do it. And try to put that in earlier.
Do the things you don't want to do first.
Right. In general.
Okay.
So for instance, right now in this time.
Vegetarians right now are like, this is not a good example.
It's one of those mother's examples, that your mother always told you, eat your vegetables first before you have dessert. Right. My children, I am, even as they're older, I'm trying to give a basic schedule to this time of Corona so that they don't just sleep all day.
Yep.
We have a certain amount of times that are for chores. We have a certain, they have large chunks of free time, but on that free time, I have some requirements of 1 hour has to be an exercise, outdoorsy kind of thing. 1 hour has to be quiet time, no devices, that sort of stuff. And then there's 3 hours for chores and doing stuff. Okay. Sure. I was trying to make it so that everybody was up by 9. Remember, I have teenagers, up by 9, and we did the chores, so they'd already had breakfast and everything. So they were ready to go. So 9 to noon was chore time until lunch.
Funny how chores was the first thing that they had to do.
Eat your vegetables first. That's what I was going for. And I still think it's a generally fine principle. Okay. Didn't survive a contact with reality in this household. We only have one early bird besides my husband's an early bird, and one of our children is an early bird. Myself and the others are night owls. I would prefer to get my 8 hours by sleeping, 1 to 9 and be ready to go after breakfast by 10. The musician says yes. Okay. And then teenagers have a tendency, their circadian rhythms kind of knock them later. And so, you know what? I was having zero problem getting the children to do the chores by 3 o'clock. Getting them to do them, up and at them and doing them before noon was like pulling. So I shifted it.
Right.
I shifted it.
Go with the path of least resistance.
Exactly. So, sometimes those things are in conflict, but you just kind of, you think through these, yes, try to get the stuff you don't want to get done first so that it doesn't hang over your head as I've got to do it, but also recognize just the realities that you've got and kind of zig with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of zig with it.
I think in the same vein of that is also sometimes you have to be able to cut things out, right? So yes. you look at it and you say, hey, you know what? I need to go back and I need to do some self-reflection. I need to look at what the most important things on here, because the reality is that I have maybe 14 waking hours where I'm feeling like being productive. And, there's times obviously we want to hang out, watch some TV shows, whatever. None of that's bad. Not saying that you have to schedule every single minute of your entire life to be productive. That's silly. That's a recipe for burnout. That's not attainable. Or sustainable is really what I'm trying to say. So if you look at it and you go, oh man, I'm dying. I just put this schedule together. And this is something that Lauren and we learned when we did our first scheduling way back when, is that, we had every 15 minutes, I feel like something else was happening in very little time.
Unless you've got a 6-month-old, that's kind of just crazy.
And so
when you've got a 6-month-old, you're thinking it's temporary.
Yeah. And that was the product of having a really young child with a bunch of digestive issues and a bunch of allergies and having to work through all of these different things. And so the reality was we didn't shift gears from that schedule quickly enough. I know. I got you. Yeah.
Huge.
So we went from, hey, we got this 6-month-old to now we need to rethink some of the rhythms because she's 2 turning 3, right? So I'll hand it back to you and say, yes.
Yeah, and that's one of the common mistakes in schedules. We haven't finished everything about putting it together,
Yep.
but we're on this. That is a very, very common mistake in scheduling, especially scheduling a parent. You schedule for a certain time period, birth to 2 months, 2 to 4 months, 6 months. At some point, often it takes some of the first months for people to realize, oh gosh, we could really benefit from a schedule. And then once they finally get one working, they think they need to stick with it but especially when you're dealing with under 2s, the constant in the under 2 land is change.
Yeah.
So I had a mother mentor that told me that she goes, you're going to get a schedule together. And for 3 weeks, it's going to be great and stuff. And then everything's going to go sideways and you're going to keep trying to, shove that round peg in that square hole. You're transitioning. It's just, that's the way it is when they're young. And you do need to recognize, okay, wait a second. I'm not in that same job anymore. My child is, how I schedule teenagers is very different than how somebody with under 5s needs to schedule. I can have a lot of, my schedule for them is in like 3-hour blocks, and they have a lot of self-directed, I have a few requirements for those blocks, but how they get it done is really up to them. Mm-hmm. Not how I would schedule a 4-year-old.
Right.
Not at all.
Right.
Because you can't expect them to come up with those kind of self-direct, and you only need to give them 1 or 2 because you're trying to teach them how to come up with this stuff, but you give them a few options and kind of work them up so that they learn. But their blocks 30 minutes maybe, and by the way, and then have some give in all of that for yourself and for the kid, because maybe the 30-minute block, okay, we're going to do homeschooling stuff until you have a 30-minute block going for art, and then you've got music coming afterwards. Or let's switch it. I'll defer to you. We'll do music first and then art. And you've got 30 minutes for music, but music is going really, really well.
Of course it is. Look at your teacher.
Right. And they're totally into it. Run with it.
Absolutely.
Run with it. Sometimes, if it's not broke, maybe you only get 45 minutes. Maybe you get an hour out of it and you're like, sweet. Don't be so wedded to the schedule that you can't. Back to our original episode where we're talking about skyscraper frameworks. To build the skyscraper, they have to have a lot of give in it so it can build in the wind. With Corona scheduling in particular, you need to have a lot of that going on. In large part, just because none of us really know what to expect. Yeah. This is pretty new for all of us except for veterans homeschoolers.
Right.
Who have their kids home all the time.
So I want to summarize before we kind of get on to our last point, because I feel like we've thrown a lot in a short amount of time, actually. So we're just talking about make sure that your schedule reflects your heart. I think that's important. Right. Make sure that your priorities are your own priorities, that they don't have to look a certain way. Just because you see somebody else doing it a certain way doesn't mean that your way has to be that way. Make sure that you're putting in times that are flexible, right? To kind of go back to the point that you just said, hey, sometimes like I have a student that takes piano and guitar. If we're just slaying it on piano that day, well, then we're not picking up the guitar because there is a breakthrough happening in piano, right? You want to nourish that. Also, make sure that you have travel times put in there, or even just transitional times, right? Mm-hmm. Don't underestimate how long things take. If anything, overestimate it. One of the things that I dislike more than anything else is rushing. I dislike rushing because it just puts me in a bad sort of headspace. Mm-hmm. And honestly, you guys saw it a little bit earlier when we were trying to figure out different inputs for the mics and sort of things, and everyone's in here yucking it up, having a good time, and I'm sitting here and I'm trying to figure things out, and y'all call me out about my attitude again.
Well, he's not being talkative. Usually he's Mr. Talkative, friendly guy, and he's sitting here head down, getting it done guy, and Sean and I are like, what's up with
and
you?
it's
And he's like, I'm working
Yeah,
here.
I'm trying to get this done. You know, we got Jim coming up here. You know, he's a busy guy. I want to make sure that we're prepared for him. And it just, it was crazy. So anyway, all right. So, and then also you've looked at it and you've said, okay, there are some things in here that just don't make sense anymore, right? So some of these things I need to either say, hey, this isn't for me in this season of my life, or I've moved out into a different area and I need to refocus things. So, okay, we've gone through all of that stuff. So lastly, we got to stick to this bad boy, right? So what are the tips for sticking to our schedules that we've made and we know are right for us? You know, this is a willpower thing. This is a discipline thing, right? There's some pieces of that. So go ahead.
Okay. So in whichever format you choose, you need to have it written down. So either a section of your bullet journal is just, here's your daily schedule thing, or I have a hidden calendar, the Life Admin calendar. This is called LA Cast, but I have a hidden calendar on my phone that's just, here's our daily schedule and it's blocked out, you know, the kids' school drop-off times, pickup times, their actual school hours, when you're here each week, when music lessons are, when my husband tends to go, like the routine building blocks that I have to have. So when you are first starting to do this, check it. I want you checking it for at least, even if you set alarms. So I did set reminders for mine. Now, eventually you turn them off because I got this. But for at least a week, you need to be checking it. And with the exception of when you're trying to figure out when you're actually drafting it, and it's not something that you can draft just in a day because you have to experiment with it a little bit. But once you've got it set, stick with it for at least 3 weeks. Stick with it as closely as you can for at least 3 weeks. Then you can start to turn on, you know, after a week or so, you can probably start to turn off your alarms. After 3 weeks or so, you probably won't need to look at it at all. And then you go ahead and you hide it on your device, or you just don't go to that page in your bullet journal that much unless something goes wrong. And then you're like, oh, okay, let's refresh. Let's get back to basics. But make it a habit. Make it a habit to pay attention to it. Make it a habit to stick with it. And it'll help quite a bit. And then you might see some stuff that, like, you know what? I thought it was really important that I did this one thing or my kids did this one thing, but really all it's doing is making us all rush. It can go away. It can go away. Or you know what? I had scheduled that I was doing exercise for 1 hour on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But the fact is my attitude is so much better when I need to get at least 30 minutes of cardio on Tuesday and Thursday as well. You know?
Yep.
Right.
I think a very important piece to this is you have to have discipline. Okay. And I don't want to pull punches here. I want to be very direct when I say this, is that generally people that I have encountered in my life, and I don't want to make this huge generalization, but I'm going to believe this is one of those things. If you're listening to this, you already know what I'm going to say, and I haven't even said it yet. But you might lack some discipline. Okay? This is not one of those things that comes easy.
No.
This is something like I never got to the point, because I'll be honest, guys, like there are times in my life where I have lacked discipline. And I never got off the take the reminders off your phone. I need the reminders. I'll never get there. That's not my personality type. We just took this big personality quiz, right? And basically what I found out was I can be very inspiring and very direct, but details, it's not my jam.
Not your thing.
Not my thing. My wife's thing, details.
Excellent.
Right?
Nice yin and yang.
Yeah, exactly. So we that totally works for us, right? She doesn't need that. Like, she has everything written out for me, right? She knows what we're supposed to do, where we're supposed to be, how it's supposed to go. I don't got it. It's not my strong suit. What I am saying is that there are going to be days where exercise comes up and you're going to go, I don't want to do it. I don't feel like doing that.
Do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
Unless you're running fever.
Right. Yeah, right.
You know?
Do it anyway. Oh, I'm coughing. I can't go out. No, but seriously, like, you know, there is a talent that 99% of people have this, like, modest amount of talent, right? And I know that that sounds awful, but then there's this 1% of people that have this crazy amount of talent, and I'm talking about in specific areas, not just in general, right? So like, so the
either music talent,
yeah,
or
exactly,
math talent,
exactly. So the thing about it is that you can have as much skill as that person that has crazy talent. It just takes discipline and hard work to get there. And this scheduling is a skill. It is a skill, and it is hard. So don't just look at it as one of those things that you just throw your hands up and say like, oh dude, I don't need a schedule. That is so basic life admin 101, bro. Like, I don't need to do that. No, you
if you don't now, you will soon. Go ahead and get the discipline up.
Your foundation. Yeah, your house is built on sand, baby, right? And that bad boy, like, it's not going to be a skyscraper. There's a storm coming, and it's going to get tumbled over, and you're going to be sitting there with your hands up in the air just going like, I don't really know.
And if you start doing it, especially if you start doing it in a stress time, like, oh my gosh, everybody's at home, I'm now working from home, and I do feel sorry for you. It's very, very, this is a hard time to start scheduling cold. Absolutely.
Yep.
Don't give up the first time it fails, because it's going to, like all of us who do scheduling, I just explained what, here, I'm an experienced scheduler, and I'm not as high stress as many at this point, because my kids are older and because I've been doing this for a while. I still made a rookie. Oh yeah. You know what, Les, you don't have early risers, and you don't even like being an early riser. So what in the world were you trying to do scheduling the chores from 9 to 8?
Definitely.
Whatever.
Definitely.
Right. Don't give up. When you fail, look at how it failed and see if you can't figure out how to work that around. And some of it may be that you're just trying to do too much. Okay. So you know what? Try to schedule this part, or try to schedule maybe the morning or the afternoon. You can break it down if you're in duress. You can break it down into smaller parts and try to make those parts work. But just because it doesn't seem to work the first or second time, don't give up.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else in closing? This is a long Twitter Thursday / formal podcast episode. I
do not think I have anything. Oh, I did have one other thing that we just didn't get to.
Hit it.
Minor recommendation. And I have actually been able to try to make when you get up first thing in the morning and when you go to bed last thing at night, try to make it not screen time. So I get up and I do all of my teeth brushing and going to so it's 30 minutes before I pick up my phone in general. I put on my watch to check the weather. But it's 30 minutes before I pick up my phone. And then I try to make the first thing that I check on my phone, either the Book of Common Prayer daily thing or the new devotional thing that I've gotten into. And then I haven't done this one yet, but I think I'm still working on that. I'm making the last 30 minutes before I go to bed not myself on my screen.
Right, because you will sleep better. Guaranteed. Night mode, knife shift, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter, dude. Just put it down.
Put it down, pick up a book instead, and let that drift you off.
Okay, well then let me plug away, as it were.
Exactly, we don't let me plug.
All right, we've learned our lesson. Okay, so our website is lifeadministration.com. That is where you can find all of our episodes, some kind of fun, interesting facts about you and I that you maybe would not know.
You can find everything there. Yeah. You can find the mini cast there. You can find the show notes links.
Yep.
Deeper reading on any of this stuff.
Absolutely. It's a great resource if you're wanting to dive deeper with us, not only personally, but also sort of our philosophy and how all this works and where we get some of our information. Social media, go ahead, Leslie. Where can people find you?
I'm at Leslie Loftus TX on Twitter. And I run the Pinterest account, which is for each episode, we have show notes of related links, deeper reading, videos with more information, stuff like that. So that's on Pinterest. And then on Instagram, we are Life Administration and put announcements. And then we have lots of mini casts there. So sometimes when we don't go into detail in one of these formal episodes, we will have a short 5-minute video of say, okay, here's how you make a household budget.
A short 5-minute video that took 9 takes.
For those of you not watching, I just stuck my tongue out at Ryan.
Okay, so she's at Leslie Loftus TX. I am at Ryan Taillon, RyanTaillon, and that is on Twitter. Don't you do it. We know about the name spelling thing. We got it. People know I can't spell my own name. I have a spelling disability. That's real and legit. Okay. So our next episode I am really, really excited about because we are going to shift gears a little bit, where you're going to take over more of the hosting roles and I am going to do a little bit more of the talking, and that's going to be how to land the interview.
Right.
So,
and I haven't interviewed in about 2 decades. So,
and I have hired
the
more people than most people will probably ever do in their lifetime. So I have a very good understanding of how to ace an interview and how to go in there really well prepared.
Now we can actually switch places?
No, we're not. I don't want that swivel chair.
Sean says yes.
Sean says we're switching places. Negative. Negative. All right.
I'll make him do it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. This was a fun one. Stay safe out there. Wash your hands and use common sense. Don't freak out. This is a time of, it can feel like panic is setting, but this too shall pass.
Yes.
Okay. See ya. Love ya. Bye-bye.